how that works. You see? Because I want to show you something live, which means I need my hands. I'm very sorry, I'm German. Mój polski nie jest dobrze. Nazywam się Oursin. Jestem z IBM. So, I will not do any Polish because you will just be laughing with me. You can see that. That's great. Let me see if I can get the resolution a little bit better for you guys. You know, this industry is 100 years old and making screens, and still that stuff doesn't really work. Yeah. So. I think that looks slightly better, right? So now we take a risky approach in changing something. You can still read that. I can make it bigger for you at the end, don't worry. Yeah, you can read that, right? If you can't read that, that's the eye test, you need a doctor. Right? So, I want to spend with you about 40 minutes on what's in analytics, on social media, on social. So I have a couple of cases for you. But before we really start, I want to make 5 minutes on general topics around social media and what social media means for businesses and what actually has changed. Now, if you think about yourself and you think about your parents, because some of these people in this room are very young, you need to think about your parents too, how the industry has developed. Think about computers. They came from businesses for businesses, and only were in businesses. And then the managers had one, and then the fathers had one, and then the kids had one. And then came the mobile phone. And how was it? The business got a mobile phone, the managers got a mobile phone. After the managers, the fathers had a mobile phone, and then the mothers got a mobile phone, and now the kids have a mobile phone. My kids have 3 mobile phones each, right? So that were all innovations and things that came from companies, that came from innovation from businesses. Now, if we think about social media, if you think about social data, that's the opposite. That comes from the bottom up. Because this Ukrainian guy that just put up WhatsApp, he didn't come out of a big corporation and changing something. The person that set up Facebook didn't come out of a big corporation. The person that set up Twitter didn't really come out of a big corporation either. They all came from, some person had an idea, put something out there on the internet, and something became very successful. So this is almost like the democratic movement we have seen in Africa the last couple of years, but also here in Eastern Europe and in the rest of the world 20 or 30 years ago. It's a democratization process going on. Everyone's participating, everyone has a word in this. Now, when you guys come to our businesses, those that are younger and still younger and not in working, if you come to our businesses, you join us with the idea of information. I can get all the information I need. I can tell you your parents didn't have that. They have that idea of information is power. And they had the idea that information is not shared with everybody. Now, I did a workshop with another institution in Krakow. They were all students, and I asked them to write on a paper what they believe is the top 5 or 7 or 10 human rights. If I did that here in Poland 20 years ago, people would tell me freedom to travel, freedom from communism, and all that kind of stuff. Very few would say information. If I do that today, about 30% of people in the classes I did, and that's not statistically valid, but it gives you an anecdotal point, say, access of information I need. That's how strongly things have changed. Now, the fact that all that change comes from the outside to businesses means that the businesses are stressed with it because we don't know what to do with it. It's nothing we control. It's nothing we innovate. It's nothing we bring to the market. It's something that comes to us, something we have very little influence over. I have no influence whatsoever how you're going to talk about my presentation when I leave the room. It's out of my control. And that's what businesses feel. Now, if I think about the relationship between customer and business, That's radically changing the idea of how we are working and how we are going to work in the future. When I bought my first car, there was no internet. I had to go to a dealer, and he was asking questions, and he was looking at his big book, and that's that, and then he continued like that. And at the end, he gave me a letter with the price, and I started to cry. Actually, my girlfriend started to cry. I tried to keep cool. We played good cop, bad cop in that negotiations. And at the end, we bought the car, but we were still kind of developing a relationship. Relationship that most companies that sit in that room, that most bigger companies today don't have with their customers anymore. That's why social analytics or social media analytics for businesses are so strategic. Okay? Now, let me talk you through a couple of use cases so you see a little bit what we're doing there, and I can inspire you a bit of what's possible. So I want to start with, I like to make jokes. And if you live in Europe, you can make a lot of jokes. You make jokes about the Czech, we make jokes about the Austrians. We are obviously always right. And I can't make jokes about the Polish people because my wife actually is Polish, so I would get very big trouble at home if I did so. So I have decided to make jokes on myself today. And just imagine, you're the board of directors of a larger European German automobile manufacturer. And let's just assume you had a little dilemma in the US with some diesel engines not fully working to the specifications. Now, what you could do now is you can go out and you can influence and you can make polls and you make surveys and you go to boards and Twitter and all that kind of stuff. That might take you too long. You want to do it right away. So imagine I'm Mr. Winterkorn. When it happened, I was still in charge. We have replaced him now. We should have replaced more of them. So what I could do and what a business would do is they would go after Twitter or they would go after Facebook or would go after others. For us, when we look at things, Twitter is probably the fastest mechanism. The UK railway system reports issues with delays based on customer Twitter information because their customers' Twitter tweeting is faster than their own systems. So I will just look for a hashtag. Let me take Volkswagen here. And then let's take diesel. Right? I didn't want to take Fiat because they're produced down here somewhere. Yes, they are. So I could just say, let me take a month of data, and I take Volkswagen and diesel. So what we would do now with, just need to click on that again. Yeah, not just need to, what we're doing now is we're going to Twitter, and we're asking Twitter for all the tweets they have with the hashtags Volkswagen and diesel. We're taking that data back, but now we have to do things with the data. We need to figure out what you said. Now, I give you two sentences, and they're not meant at you, they're just meant as general. If I say, you are better than those idiots, or if I say, those idiots are better than you, it is the opposite meaning, but it's the same words. So what we're doing is we're doing things such as sentiment analysis, we're doing things such as trying to figure out what the notional intention is, and so on and so forth. And then we classify. We classify in positive, in neutral, in negative. We're talking in ambivalent. So if I say, this great company has been entirely ruined, that's kind of both positive and negative. We can really hardly say what that basically means. So it's still transferring data. I think I got a lot of tweets, over several hundred thousand, I think I have. So I have a few more things to say, and then we will be done. I've tested it before, so it should be working. So it's not a manipulated diesel software that I have. Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to figure out who the authors are. Because if you think about businesses that want to influence people, the authors or the source of the information generally is the key. You know a person called Oscar Pretorius? So he had a little accident with the bath door and a few bullets and a dead body in that, right? So what we looked at is how many people actually are living in South Africa, RPA, that are influencing the public opinion. Because here comes a secret about social media, and that is most of the stuff is not produced. Most of the stuff is shared. Think about your own Facebook account, how often you type yourself and how often you share something. Or think about your kids if you're a little bit older. Then think about your kids and what they are doing. they are actually very often sharing. Now, if you go all the sharing things back, you will end at the very end at someone that started this. And that's exactly the same that would happen here in Poland. If you think about I was almost trying to make a joke about the last couple of elections, because they gave me some money, because I could I was betting for who is going to win, independently of any preference, and I was right, because I could see what happens in Twitter and everywhere. And that's a very interesting thing we do. So you need to come back to the sources, and there's a few key journalists in Poland, a few journalists that write, a few public figures that you would listen to. And the same is true in South Africa. If Bishop Tutu opens his mouth, everyone's listening. If John, I don't know his last name anymore, from the head news is saying an intentional thing about Oscar Pistorius, people share that opinion. And that's how the thing is driven. And it's a very interesting observation, because if now I am Volkswagen, I want to actually go to those people that define the public opinion about me, not those that share the public opinion about me. Because if you share something, and I don't mean you as a person, but you as a human being share something, and you have 5 followers, who cares? But if I share something, or you share something, and you're an analyst, you're an industry, you're a prominent person, and you have 1 million followers, that's a total different thing that's going to happen. And that's what it's all about. So here we have our Volkswagen in diesel data. I just moved it over to Watson Analytics, which did all the stuff for ourselves. You're not IT people, I know that, but all the metadata modeling and all kind of the blah, 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 that no one really wants to do and always takes time and costs money. We have done that. We have done that for you on your behalf. And what we should be seeing now is we should be seeing a time scale where we see how the tweets went. And guess now we can have an estimated, we're going to guess when we announced the problem with the diesel engines. It's not hard to see, right? It was in the evening of September 21st, which is here. And now what you can see is what happens. And you can also see what kind of sentiments, or what kind of intentions people had with that. So we have a lot of ambivalent, that's those we can't say. We have, those are blank, those we cannot digest. We have issues with digesting certain languages. We have issues digesting certain abbreviations. So the Polish is probably the most difficult language to get intentions from anyways. And I can prove that because I'm married to one. The intention's hard to guess. But then also, if she's using abbreviations, it's terrible. Who would ever know? Which machine would ever know that Ola actually is Alexandra, for instance? True. So you also see that we have a negative and a bit of positives here. You see the negatives are green, the positives are red, which is only programmers can come up with that idea, right? But so we will fix that. I've seen that just now. So you see the negatives, there's a big of negatives. There's a lot of neutrals that were just observations. And then at the end of the day, you see that we have actually a lot of positives as well. Does that make sense? So far, so good? Now let's look about who likes us. Because we Germans, we're average. No one really hates us, but no one really loves us either. And we want to be loved, but something in our character makes people so hard to love us, right? So I just don't know. I just don't know why that is, but let's just assume it is what it is, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm asking a question, and that would be something like number of tweets by country. Let me see if this thing can come up with something. It's quite clever, actually. So let me see where are our tweets, where people are really talking about, and where they're talking a lot about us, or actually Volkswagen. I'm not part of Volkswagen, luckily enough. I'm part of a software company, but we don't cheat. So you can see there's a lot of debate in the US. There's a lot of debate in Europe as well. The darkness of the color tells you where the thing is. Almost everyone in the world really spoke about this problem. Everyone knows Volkswagen now, I can tell you that. From a marketing campaign perspective, I'm not sure it was so bad for them if they fix it, right? But now let's look into Europe. And here, you see, our neighbors in France. The Italians too, but they talk all the time. I mean, ever been on an Italian airport and they go and there's girls calling her boys home, and it's just what it is. In Spain as well, we have a big factory down there. And then the others are more like mildly, like, okay. Now, the other thing that I might probably want to look at is if the sentiment is negative. So let me just filter a little bit. Let me see who are the guys that are talking badly about us. It's the French and the Brits. We knew it. The French and the Brits, whenever they do something, that's what they do to us. So now, when I'm Volkswagen, I can now make that connection and say, these are the areas where I need to spend most of my money on. Does it make sense? I mean, if you think about what I would now do as Volkswagen with that information is, I would start to, it's all near Gasovana. What I would do is, it's all now about going into the markets where we have the largest problem. Because if you think about marketing, you only have definite money. You don't have indefinite money. You dream about if you study marketing, but that's not going to happen for you guys. I can tell you that. So doing this basically means that we are now at the point where we have defined an area where we want to go to and an area that we want to analyze more. Now, I did another this morning. I was sitting in my hotel. I'm over there in the Westin, and I can look into some kind of blocks that say nothing. So I was playing around with SGH and SGH Warsaw. The negative thing about that was that only positive sentiments ever. So I then can't play that with you. But that is just a little bit looking into this. Then we can do different things. We have different pieces of information we're getting from Twitter, and we're looking at when we look at Twitter. We, for instance, look at gender. There's unknown gender male, and unknown doesn't mean it's like Boy George, where it's kind of not really known what it is. It's more about that when you have your account, you not necessarily give that information into your account. And again, you have names where it's very hard to determine whether that's a man or a woman. Then we have the author friend count. So this is the impact that a person would have from a social analytics point of view. So the idea is, you have 5 friends, I don't care. You have 5,000, I start worrying. You have 50,000, I'm really worried about. Right? So that's the idea that becomes behind. Then we have the retweet and the author tweet count. So here we can go a little bit further now. Look at line number 3. You see that this guy has 250 retweets, but only 1 tweet. He's a lazy bastard. He's just saying retweet or share, right? It's also not very dangerous for us. Because when we want to go to those that he's actually retweeting on. So that is the next kind of step we want to go. Then we have the number of followers that he has. You know, if you go for Twitter, it's not like Facebook with friends. It was great what you said about Facebook, but I only understood half of it. And you spoke like twice as fast as I can digest one sentence in a minute. So you have the author followers, and you see how many followers they have. So obviously those that have a lot of followers are more problematic for us than those that have very few followers. Then we've seen the country, we've seen the sentiment, we have the name. So if you are like I am, that you call yourself as you are, then we would actually know who you are. If we don't know who you are, and you take a synonym, then we would have to do extra work on figuring out who is behind the synonym. Don't tell me we can't find that out, because you are smart. You're using the same synonym in Facebook and in Twitter and in other places, and in one place you accidentally put your real name next to it, which will tell us, yeah, that's it. Or you do something very smart. You go to Amazon and buy something. No, you go to Allegro, actually. You go to Allegro and you buy something, and then you go to Google and you search something, and then you go to Twitter, and then we can make the cross-linking, because with your IP address and with your MAC address and with all the things you're using, we know basically who you are. And then if you are smart and you call yourself Darth Vader 25, well, there's about 1 million maybe Darth Vaders 25, but not all of them speak Polish. And not all of them comment on sushi restaurants in Warsaw, so we also have a possibility of narrowing this one down. Making sense? So far, so good? All right. Now, this is the social aspect. If there's a question you can ask. We are usually in a business where we are not very interactive? No, we are. So you can ask questions. So that was one idea on how we can take social media data and how we can drive value for a business. I want to very quickly show you another one, because I believe that is something that resonates with you as well. Think of Tesco, Biedronka. Who else do we have? Biedronka is an animal, actually. Took me a long while to understand that actually is not a shop for pets. So think about these kind of retailers that you wanna think about. So what I did is I preloaded the data because I don't have another talk track for you. And what we did is we looked into, that was a real project actually. So we looked after all Facebook, Twitter, whatever thing you can, blogs, microblogs, whatever you want to have. And the retailer we worked with was interested in what's going on in my market. Something with my campaigns isn't working. How are people reacting? What are people thinking about us? So we brought the data in, and obviously the Watson thing is a cognitive computing thing, and I actually don't want to talk about computing today, because then you say, that's an IBM, and they all talk about computers all the time. I want to talk about what we can do with it. And what we're doing with this cognitive approach is we are looking at data on your behalf. We are finding things out for you on your behalf, and we are helping you. The difference, anyone has an IT degree here or ever heard about IT? So there are 3 eras of computing. The one was the tabular computing. You know these old tabular things? There's no older people in this one. They make holes in these tabs, right? You've seen on pictures, right? Yeah, I'm sure that some government in some country somewhere still has that. East of Russia, they have it still. Then was the programmable computer area. That's the area where the man tells or the woman tells the system what to do. And we're still in that. And the only trick why one product's better than the other is it does it nicer for you, but it still does the same thing. So whether I'm using this thing or I'm using this old overhead thing with my slides, it doesn't really make a big difference, right? Then comes the cognitive era, and that is when the computer becomes assistant. Then the computer thinks and argues with you and becomes a sparring partner. And that's what we're doing here. So the computer makes suggestions to me, and it says you should look at where that things come from and what they actually mean. So now we have done 2 months of investigations, 2 months of social analytics, and you can see that in May and June both, mostly we were speaking about supermarkets and then about services with them. Product ranges was actually interesting that it was not very important in May, but became more important in June. The more important it is, the more left it becomes. Stores and promotions became pretty even, so promotions kind of went down. So that's the first thing when I look at what we're getting back from the data kind of thing. The second thing that catches my eye here is the sources. And that's something that if you do social analytics, you can't just go after one thing, or you can go after one thing, but if you go after multiple things, you need to understand where things come from. Because people that use LinkedIn are mostly business-driven. People that use Facebook are mostly privately driven. Twitter is maybe something like in the middle. So what I mean, if you go after LinkedIn and you want to get a private opinion, like which is the next girlfriend I should pick, maybe you want to go after Facebook. So here you can see that in May we had a lot of news channels, news feeds, a lot of blogs, boards. Twitter wasn't that important, but then in June we got a lot of tweets back about retailers. So something happened. That's all UK. I guess you have relatives living in the UK or heard about people immigrating to the UK, so if you call them, you know something about them that they don't know about themselves. And blogs came up. So some changes was, while the news went really badly down. Now, if I was a retailer, the first kind of question I have, and here comes the cognitive computing, because I simply can ask a question, would be something like, what is the number of mentions? So how often has something been mentioned? So we don't want to talk about documents yet. Maybe by the type of thing that's mentioning us. And so I would start. And I will not tell you which retailer we've been working with, but there's a couple of them in there. And what you very quickly will see, let me just change that, is that the most mentions have been around supermarkets, then services, product ranges, promotions, and and store. So if I was a marketing manager, if I was a business leader, maybe that's the area I want to focus on. That's the biggest money. And so let's just simply go into this one and see what's in there. And what you can see here is that Tesco got a lot of mentions. But then look at the number 2. Which is number 2? Yeah, where does it come from? That's cool, isn't it? Biedronka is not yet in the UK. It would be much higher if it was there. You could call it Ladybird, and they would all love it. Ladybug. So now here's a secret. Who knows in this room? You're all economical people. Who knows the market shares of the retailers in the UK? Wow! That's a round of applause. That's the first time in my life I found someone that knows that. I had told my wife how proud I am to be in the smart group of Warsaw School of Economics people, and I have the proof. She's right. It's 4.1% for Aldi and 28% for Tesco. Sainsbury's is about 17. The others are kind of okay. So what we learned immediately is Aldi is outperforming everybody else in social media. So if you think about which UK retailer is most successful and most successfully mentioned in the social media, it's Aldi. Whether that's a positive and a negative mention, we're going to get into this in a little while, but it's German, can't be negative, I hope. So the next thing, obviously, that you would then look into is what are they actually saying during the time frame that we visited them or we checked them. So I will just go in the same, what is the number of documents? Now this time we take a document, not just a mention. So because if you have a document in a blog and you talk about Aldi 15 times, it's only one document that talks about Aldi. So what I want to do is I want to reduce the number by making every single distinct document. So that's, I'm not asking how often it was mentioned, which is great, because if my wife tells me you need to take the garbage out, don't forget the garbage, and the garbage is important because you don't want to forget the garbage before you watch soccer, then she's doing this, but it's still about one thing only, really, right? I will anyway forget it. Then we take the day, for instance. We can do that, and then let's just take a concept as what we would do here. And then let's have a look here. Oh, there's a lot of them. So let me just go for my supermarkets again. No, I don't want to go. We're going for my supermarkets again because we just want to look at them. So, and who remembers still? Who is paying attention? Who was the retailer that outperformed everyone else? Yes, it was Aldi. We did not expect that to come back, honestly. We were as surprised as the other retailers. And what you can see here is they have a constantly pretty high number of tweets. But at one point in the time we visited them or we analyzed them, something has happened. That's the Volkswagen thing. It was a positive thing, but it was a Volkswagen kind of thing that everyone in the UK actually spoke about. What happened is, I know what happened, is they announced their market share, and they got up in market share so badly that everyone was kind of stunned about that. So let me just ask a new question and go forward. So the next kind of question, I don't want to go for supermarkets only, I want to go for everything again. The next kind of question, so now what we learned basically is where they're coming from. Aldi is very successful. We know that Tesco has a more balanced but has a lot of tips. Aldi only has one big tip in the month, so we learn a little bit about the dynamics, because if you're a marketeer, that's important because you want to launch a marketing campaign at the moment it has the biggest impact. So when everyone's listening to you, or when there's a topic out there that they talk about that supports your marketing campaign. Because you can create a marketing campaign, that's the motor engine, or you can sail on a marketing campaign with the wind and the power that you get from another one that's talking about. So one of the things that you obviously, what are retailers doing? They're selling stuff. So the next typical question would be, what do they think about what we are selling? So I would kind of do the same. What is the number of documents? Again, I wouldn't go for mentions anymore because that wouldn't make sense. I will still take my concept, but then I would go for product ranges. So what I'm basically doing is I'm filtering that what I'm doing on product ranges. That's cognitive computing because it now understands that 4 was meaning something different, and my intention is that I want to see something such as that. And here is where UK people and Polish people are actually very similar. They prefer to talk about food and wine. You can see that with the wine and the barbecue, less so flowers and all that kind of stuff. So if I were a retailer, what I would do that is would possibly do promotions around wine and barbecue, and I would combine them. Because now we spoke about that you can create your own thing, but if you already speak and see wine gets a lot of attraction, anything that you combine with it will be sucked with that attraction it gets that. You know, if you marry a woman, then you get the sister of her with it. That's kind of the concept that comes here from a social point of view. It's all about social, right? So we need to talk about these things. So what we did with that retailer is we really did define a promotion for wines and barbecues, and then we looked into what kind of products we really need to get more sold, and we combined them into the promotions with wine or barbecue so that people can actually buy those. Make sense? Still with me? Cool. So 1 or 2 more questions here, and then I give you the last case. So, and that is, now when you do that, then you still want to make sure that they talk positively about you. Like, you know, yeah, you just want to make sure what the sentiment is. So let me go in here and just do exactly the same. So I will ask for the breakdown. No, that's not a breakdown. It would correct my wording. It's okay with the German, right? Now we go for the mentions again, because now I want to get into how often it was actually mentioned. Concept and by sentiment. And sentiment now is exactly whether they were positive, and I want to just go for my supermarkets that we did that for. So let me see what we can get here, and then see what we can find. And again, we find something quite interesting. And I don't use the word interesting in the British sense, because if a British person tells you, oh, that's an interesting idea, they basically tell you that's bullshit. So look at Tesco for a moment and see they have how their sentiments are actually distributed. And you see they have actually a quite high number of negative sentiments. They're the one with the largest number of negative sentiments because they're darkest blue in their corner. Now then, if you think about Aldi, and really that was a surprise, they have 5% market share, and they have about 30% of the tweets and of the social communication, but at the same time, most of that is positive. So this is something that people look at. Look at Lidl. It's another German massacre. Lidl is very different, because you see they have a lot of neutrals, but they are not able to get a lot of positives either. They don't have any bads, but they're not creating a lot of positives. So they are different from the others. So maybe it's because they're just cheap and whatsoever. Then a very small one, what runs out here, they have their focus just on the very positives, and for the rest it really doesn't exist. So something they do differently. So that's how you find out what your customers actually think about you. That doesn't mean that you as an individual think that, but you as a general customer group think exactly like that. Making sense? And the last thing that I want to do is I want to go into where do I want to put my money. Now that I have the marketing money that I can spend, I want to put that. So now again, I'm asking a question to help me answer that kind of thing. So I will go for the number of documents. Again, now we don't want to go for the total thing. We again use concept. We could change the visualizations as well. And by source. So that's actually where it comes from for supermarkets. So now we know who gets good sentiments and who gets bad sentiments and so on and so forth. Now I'm going over me as a company. Where do I go? In which do I market in Facebook? Do I market in Twitter? Do I market in the news and all that kind of stuff? Because now the question is of what I want to do, how can I have the biggest impact? And here you can see the distribution. So if I was Aldi, I would really go after Twitter and maybe a little bit after news. But Tesco really needs to also consider news, because without news, they're not reaching a lot of the communication about them, right? So that's how you use, that's a case how you use social media and driving understanding of who your customer is. All right? Okay, I have one last case. Should we go for one last case? You like those cases? All right. So for the last case that I did, I have a bit of a different approach, guys. And the approach is that we have worked with an airline, and we have used airline feedback. Now, the problem with the airline business is it's a total mess up from a systems perspective. Because a lot of the feedback that the airlines have about their customers is in their own systems. The reason is that they have the booking systems, whether you rebook, whether you change, whether you cancel, whether you do all that kind of stuff. Making sense? So what we did here is we brought the data from the social media where we identify people. We scored. So we didn't say they are negative or positive or neutral. We gave them a 1 to 5, whether they are very unhappy or very happy. And we did the same scoring on data that the airline has in-house, like through their loyalty programs, through the communication with customers, through emails and all that kind of stuff. And we brought the data back in, and we have that satisfaction survey. Now, the perception in the room, imagine I'm your marketeer and you are my board. So I'm working for you. We have a conversation about satisfaction, how satisfaction kind of impacts our business. And so the first question really would be, what is the satisfaction by airline name? So I want to see if there actually is a difference in whether customers are more satisfied with me than they are with others. So we worked with that airline. It was very interesting. We have anonymized that, so you won't see that. But surprising enough, here you find an Oursin Airlines. It's my private airline. I'm flying with them. And we are typical German. We are in the middle of the bunch. No one loves us. No one hates us. We had that before. But really, if you think about satisfaction in airlines, there's not a big difference. So when we had that conversation with that airline, the first result was kind of disappointing. Because the board obviously expected to see a big change or a big difference between some vendors and some other vendors, and it didn't quite turn out as such. Now here comes a human concept. A human concept that you need to understand. And that we call the what, the why, and the respond. We as human beings cognitively, brain cognitively, work in a certain way. The way we work is the what, the why, and the respond. So if your boss comes and asks a critical question, number one, what's the state of affairs? Is that correct? Number two, why actually is that? So once I know what it is, I can fix it. And number three, how can I respond back? Now, this is the Warsaw School of Economics. This is the basics of business, that if you don't know what's driving a problem, or if you don't know what's facilitating a success, it's very hard for you to replicate. So if you have an area in your business, let's say you take Dolny Śląsk, for instance, and you say, that's my most successful area of business. I had to say that. I lived in Wrocław for a while. I love it down there. So you see that's great, but if you don't know why that's going so well, it's very hard for you to take it over and make it work up here. So the understanding of what drives it is really that. And then you need to formulate the answer. I do the same. I'm coming home at night. I'm late. My wife opens the door. She's angry. I'm looking at the watch. Yes, I am late. So I need to explain why I did this and yada, 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 yada. And then I need to present it back in a very nice way. So a bottle of wine does a lot of things. Flowers don't work anymore. And all that kind of stuff, right? So, but we wouldn't talk about a satisfaction problem if we didn't have one. So maybe the board is really talking to more better of our customers. So their status is higher. And they would maybe talking to more the platinum and the gold and the silver customers rather than the blue ones. But there I see a problem that I have. And the problem I have is the blue customers are reasonably unhappy. That will make it very hard for me to get them happier. Then we have the platinums that are much less happy than the gold and the silvers. Now that's all the customers where I spent my money on, right? I have until past. Yes, I'm good in timing. So I have until, I'm German, I will not be 1 second over. But I gracefully take all the time that wasn't eaten up beforehand. So the platinum customers, if I'm a marketer, that drives tears into my eyes. That's the customer I spend so much money on, so much love and tender care I give them, and yet they're unhappy. And maybe that's also related to the travel they're doing. So we looked into what the type of travel that they are doing, whether they are personal travelers or business travelers, or if they use some of their lot mileage. No, it wasn't a lot, we did that, don't worry about that. So we have looked at that, and you can really see very quickly that the silver and the golds are always top, and platinum and blue are really always bottom. And that's a problem. The other thing you see is that the personal travelers, that's the lowest bar, they're really the most unhappy. So there's some kind of contradiction in why the platinum's unhappy, but then it's business travel. This is the typical social thing you have. I will privately say that whenever I meet another person, in particular when it's a woman, I have the same, there's contradicting information coming my way, right? And that's the human contradiction. And whatever we talk about social media, about Facebook, about Twitter, about all the other things, there is this naturally human built-in contradiction that we need to go further into to resolve that problem for us. You kind of get that, right? So it took me like 2 minutes and we figured all the kind of stuff out, but I still don't know why that is. So let me do something else. Let me take my data and actually run what we call a prediction. A prediction is where now I use all these concepts that you as students or you business owners love, like data mining, statistics, mathematics, and we use them to really figure out where are the correlations between how happy and how unhappy customers are. Because the fact that there is a big thing between one and the other doesn't mean that there is an impact. It might be just the result of something totally different. And we want to go afterwards, it's the impact, right? So I'll tell you a good example. We had a company we worked with. They had all the women quitting. And they were looking into everything. Sexual harassment, offices, dress code, payment. Until we did a survey and we did something like this, and they figured out the absence of the kindergarten drives it, because it's impossible for them to work at that company well and not have childcare at the same time. So women quitting was because of the absence of childcare. That was the driver. If you see a lot of women quitting, you would not know that, right? So let me just say, what drives satisfaction? And what it does now, and it's, you know what, everything I'm showing is live, by the way. So what it's doing now is it's using all these statistical methods that you love so much, and it's applying it on the data. So if you're smart, your next statistical exam, you write with something like this because it does it for you. It analyzes the data, but it analyzes it totally different. Because when we look at what is the satisfaction by, we just tell you the reality. Here we're telling you the patterns, the kind of insights on where the input and where the output is and how that is related. So that will maybe take 1 or 2 more seconds more, and then we will see that we have here what we call a bullseye chart. This part of the product component is built in Texas. They wouldn't call it, it's not that fast right now, but it will come. Don't worry, guys. I will not give up yet. It's called a spiral chart. And what you should now it's coming. What you should see is that the closer that it's called spiral chart because actually it is a spiral. But I'm Bavarian, so I'm like a Texan. We can call it bullseye. So the closer the ball is to the middle, the more it impacts or explains satisfaction. And we get type of travel. I thought it was something different, but we got type of travel back, and then we got a big surprise back with its age range. Imagine you're an airline, you're flying. You really believe age drives satisfaction? That was a huge surprise for this company. They wouldn't know what to do with it. They were falling off the chairs while we showed them what we found, because that's a driver that they never thought to put first. They thought about seating and food and check-in and boarding and baggage and luggage. And you know why they do that? Because they're human beings. And what's the biggest fault of a human being? The so-called trap of perception. What is the trap of perception? It is our experience that leads us when we see something that we have seen before and fixed with a certain trick. We apply that same trick again on the same concept because we believe it's the same. It's confirmation bias. That's why planes crash. Because the pilot doesn't get the full picture of where they are. They think they are somewhere. They see the computer doing something they've seen before, and they align that with a positive experience that they had before. Experience is the enemy of change very often, and that helps you overcome that experience. And then comes airline status. Now, you will argue with me that very seldomly a company is actually impacted by one thing only. So that's also a human and social thing. If you want to get someone to buy from you, if you want to get someone to marry you, if you want to get someone to go out a date with you, if you want someone to do something for you, it's usually a package you need to offer, not just one thing. So let me get into a combination of things, and then we see things a bit more clearer, and we see things a bit more holistically. Now, have you guys seen decision trees? You should have seen decision trees. Let me say it that way. What we do with decision trees is we basically show how we take a population of people. I don't know why that's slow right now. Are you all tweeting about what I'm doing here? Taking the internet down for me? Because a lot of people were taking pictures. I saw that. And that's always, when I see that, then I'm always nervous about what happens to my internet. Anyway, so I will manage. So we have basically all our customers, and we segment them first by the type of travel. We find out that the personal travelers are the least happy. Those we segment by airline status, silver, gold, and then we have blue and platinum. Then we segment by whether there was a delay at the arrival. People are not very nervous about departure delays, but very sensitive about arrival delays. Yes and no, and then comes in the age part. Now, you will see that they have funny shadows here. The decision tree is much larger, but we don't show you the large decision tree. We show you the small decision tree. What we're trying to do here, it's another cognitive element, is we're trying to digest the information down to a complexity that you as a human being can at one glance understand it. Those decision trees can have tens of thousands of leaves. They can be very complex. What we're doing is we're bringing it down to the top 5. There are 5 numbers. You can see them here as well as screenshots. These are the top most unhappy groups of our airline customers. Making sense? If you are more textual, some people actually are. I'm a mathematician, I'm also more textual actually. We can describe those groups. So what we found out from that analysis is actually that, for a matter of fact, there are certain groups of our customers that are predicted or are expected to be very unhappy. So the first one is the personal travelers, blue and platinum, a little bit delayed, and they're over 60. You could argue they're almost dead. We don't want to worry about them. Which an airline actually wouldn't. Because they would say, no, wait a minute. That's actually all the pensioners that spent their money on traveling. We want to make them happy. Now, the next one is type of travel with personal travel, with blue and platinum, and so on and so forth, with age ranges. There comes up female. We are all Europeans. Whenever comes the word female, we need to do something. Then we have the other groups. So you as an airline now know exactly which group of customers to attack with the correction of satisfaction. And by us describing you the factors of what's driving them into happiness or unhappiness gives you a better course of action. So far, so good? So this is not telling you that these customers are as dissatisfied. This tells you these customers are going to be as dissatisfied as that. So, and the final part, which we usually would then do, is we take that information and we report it back to the airline or to the board, and we would basically just simply build something that helps. The customer that we did that with called it the what, the why, and the wow. So the what, to find out what is the satisfaction problem, the why, that actually why is that, and then the wow is we could go back to the board and we can tell them really well what happened and why things happened and where the driver sits. And this is today, and I will start where I go back where I started with. This in today's world is almost the only option you have where you can understand your customers, improve the individual approach towards some of your customers. I've heard individualization before, and some of you spoke about it, and some other people spoke about it. So this is, you need to understand what they think, what they feel, what they're after for you to individualize. If you don't know what you're individualizing towards, it's very hard. And just like most other businesses, the airline business, the retail business, the car business with some extent are very impersonal today. I mean, if you want to check in at LOT, you probably check in a machine. If you check in at Lufthansa, you're checking in a machine. There is no personal contact anymore between them and myself. So even if the airline was interested, what I feel when I come and how I'm doing, it's very hard to read that from a machine. I can tell you there's a Swiss company that can read from your face. Yes, we have not we, but we have a partner of ours. They have managed to understand what your emotional feeling is when you look at a camera. And you can play James Bond and not show, they would read it. At about 95%, they could read what that is. So let's imagine that you're buying a new dress, you two ladies here in the front, or you're buying them a new dress, and you're going shopping, and they are watching in that outlet, and they see a dress, and they're talking, and they say, I like that dress, it's really cool. And then they come in, and there comes the shop owner and says, Miss Kowalska, you're back, it's great, wonderful. You know what, we have a new dress for you. What, have you looked at that one? We just get it in, and we think it fits you so well. So if you take all those things together, that's how people start reading information. Now, the last example is nothing we are doing, that's other people doing, and there's a question of privacy and all that kind of stuff. But what I'm trying to allude you to is, if you want to understand your customers in a modern world, you need to understand from where they are, and that's in the social environment. That's where they blog, where they communicate, that's where they share. That's basically the biggest source of information about who you're dealing with. And we're all doing it today. So imagine you meet someone at Milshinsky. You know Milshinsky? Or Sakana Sushi, for those that don't know Milshinsky. You meet someone, and this person tells you, that's my name. If you're really interested in a person, what's the first thing you're doing at home? The man goes home and goes into Facebook and sees, are there more pictures? What is the woman doing? Let's go to Facebook and see. Does he have a family? Is he married? It's too good of a guy that, I need to be sure. We are all using that social form of information for ourselves today, every day in our lives. I think when you travel, you do the same. Which kind of company you want to travel with, which kind of hotel you want to travel to, which kind of feedback you get. This is the way that things work. And I believe that when we look at the social world, when we look at how our societies have changed in the last 10 or 15 years, then the biggest resource or natural resource of information and value that companies can drive is from exactly that. It's from the understanding of who my customers are, what they are doing, why they're doing this, and what they are likely going to do next. And I end up with a rather not so good example. I'm having a house in Sweden, and obviously we go there every summer. My wife is very happy. She loves summer and beach and sunshine, and I'm putting her into a lake in the middle of nowhere in the forest. Masuri is like Rimini or Bibione compared to where we are, right? So if the Earth was a disk, that it would be the edge of the disk. That way up, okay? So, but Stena Line, that's a company that we've seen, and TT Line and others, we usually go with different airlines, whether we go through Świnoujście or whether we go through Rostock or whether we go to Kiel, depends on where we're coming from and who wins where we go first or second. But then they started to send me emails, like every week. They know I'm traveling one time a year. And they send me every week an offer about a cruise here, a thing there, tickets cheaper here, tickets cheaper there. I now have filters on my inbox that rules that all out. And they should know that. They should understand who I am. They should understand that when I'm booking things. I had a wife and kid and dog last time. So when I'm booking this time, I'm not having no wife and no kid and no dog. At least it's not as likely as I still have them. Let me put it this way. Because it's all about statistics, it's all about likelihood, not about reality. I might have another wife and another kid when I'm booking the next time. That's fine. It still appears to be the same. So why do they offer me for a four-seater cabin? When I book, they always offer me a two-seater first. You say, you know me, guys. I never had a two-seater. Right? So this is how social media can help companies improve. And I believe this is something that if you think about your own economy, if you think about the amazing interconnection between the Polish economy, the European economy, and other economies, the better that you understand the market, the better you understand what your customers out there think about what you're doing, the better of service you will be. So I hope that was interesting. That was a real-life example. You saw I haven't brought you any slides because I'm a non-slide presenter. And I hope you enjoyed that as well in such a long day, in such a big room. Thank you so much.
Any questions? Yeah.
So you're talking about whether we experience that for stock exchange
Exactly.
analytics.
Whether the stock exchange financial guys are trying to use that tool to just say, you know, those guys will be 5% cheaper or 50% more expensive next quarter.
So I can tell you that if you analyze a larger company as a financial analyst, you will find a lot of information about the status of that company in the social media. Now, this is only one part of information. There's the financial fundamentals and so on and so forth. But absolutely, I have not personally been involved, but I know that, for instance, some of our American friends are doing things with some of the biggest financial traders in the world, because the financial traders try to differentiate by this 1% more information that gives you the 1% more likelihood of being right, which makes you win the deal at the end, that makes you make money and not losing money, because this is a very short. This is not like black and white kind of business, right? And they are striving for information, they're fighting for information, and they try to get at anything as they can get at. Now, there's one problem. That is, financial institutions usually drive these investments and these decisions very, very quickly. So it's almost real time, or it needs to be near real time. One of the problems is always, and will always be, the time it needs to computerize some of these things. Just because people pretend to be someone else, people lie, people do different things. We need to make sure that when we do social analytics that we actually kind of take measures on managing this. Like in any poll you do in politics, you will find people saying, no, I will not vote for Szkoła, and they will, and then they will say, no, I'm not voting for Kopacz, but I will. And then the art is to figure out how big is the error that we're getting through these kind of things. So it's not that simple, but obviously, I can tell you one thing. If a big financial company or a big company comes into trouble, Twitter knows it before the financial analysts know it. So that's why they all follow Twitter and they read their Twitter channels to see what's going on. Right? Okay? Okay. There's one question right in the back.
One question from up here.
Is Watson a machine that I could buy and put into my server space, or this is cloud solution, cloud service?
Watson Analytics is a cloud solution. Don't mess around with Watson and Watson Analytics. IBM has a very large marketing team, and they all use the word Watson in a total different way, so we try to confuse the society. We've been very successful with this, by the way. Watson Analytics is a cloud service. You can just go to watsonanalytics.com. You can use it. It's free. Only if you use some professional features like the social Twitter analysis, you would have to pay for it, but you can use it right away. It's a cloud service. You can't have it on-prem. It's too much technology, too much complexity at the end, in the back end, that takes us 80 days to get one data center set up. We would basically ruin your company by just asking for doing that. Okay?
Yep.
Yeah, so you gave many interesting examples. I'm thinking actually how you are setting the baseline for your analysis from the population habits and behaviors perspective. Because, for instance, average satisfaction by age range. You know, we can have 10 teenagers that are extremely happy, and we can have one senior that can be unhappy. Then the question is, can we say that actually all seniors are unhappy, or perhaps, you know, there are no habits for seniors to perform this type of analysis?
So obviously, only having like 40 minutes or 50 minutes, the time is very limited. These projects don't happen in 50 minutes. So I had to trim it down. But here you see something called associations. That's exactly what you would now look at. You would see how are the age ranges and how are they filling the age, where is the distribution, how is the baseline, all the kind of thing you would generally do. It would just take me too long to show that. So you obviously go into this. And right you are. We need to make sure that it's not just that you have a high enough number. We need to also make sure that the distribution of the data we're analyzing is representative of the distribution of the people we want to understand. So you take 10 teenagers and you want to figure out if the new business suit is going to sell or not. It's not going to give you the answer you want, right? So you need to look into what's your target market. You look into what your population is that you want to understand and that you want to harvest or you want to sell to. And that's then you need to make sure that that fits with the overall strategy. Making sense? Okay. There is a lot of credibility at that. There has to be credibility. That's why these are projects. The what's analytics thing usually is the entry point. It's the appetizer, right? It's the drink you spend at the bar. Now, until the marriage is more investment that you have to do. And that is when we sit together and we look. But this helps you defining where you want to look at. So if you think about the customer groups we identified as being in trouble, now we can take more sophisticated technology and we can run it at them to find out certain behaviors. Maybe they have a problem. Maybe the age problem is because they have problem moving the mouse and our web page is too complex. The click stream isn't helpful for them. So we can do the next question, the next question, and the next question. But rather than us putting everything over everybody, we're using this to filter down the area we want to work on. Okay, so again,
one more
bardzo
thing.
dziękuję.
One more question.
Yeah.
I've recently read that Watson has a competition which is called Holmes, made in India. Have you heard about that?
I haven't heard about that one.
Yeah, I'll send you an article about that.
Okay. So, bardzo dziękuję. Do widzenia.